Hello, 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 and welcome to another fantastic episode of Anarchy Among Friends Roundtable discussion. Before we get started, let me first remind you that we are covered by the BIPCOT No Government License, which allows for the reuse and reuse of this podcast by anyone and everyone except for governments and the bludgies thereof. You can learn more about that at bipcot.org. That is BIPCOT.org. We're also protected by Brandenburg v. Ohio, 1969, which ruled that the government cannot punish inflammatory speech unless that speech is, quote, directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action. Therefore, everything we say here on Anarchy Among Friends Roundtable discussion is entirely hypothetical.
For whatever good it does to say that.
Right?
Yeah. We're all
I would like to
Minecrafting fantasy writers or something.
That's right. Quick patch check for everybody. I see Andrew's got Boogaloo Shark.
Boogaloo Shark.
What do you got?
What do you got? You got Killdozer.
I got Killdozer.
I got my Millennium Falcon Rebel Scum on my hat, and I got a new one on my mic stand.
Nice Molotov cocktail.
Little Molotov. I thought that might have been a little apropos.
Let your light shine upon the world.
So, yeah, that might be a little hint at what we got coming up in this podcast.
Yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about. Man.
I would have worn my Hawaiian shirt again, but unfortunately, it's actually rather cold when I have the window open here. So, hoodie it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have one behind me, but it's like 40 degrees in this room right now. So.
We have an article about those also.
Yeah, and welcome to Wisconsin in the winter. It's you might want to wear a Hawaiian shirt, but it's really fucking cold.
You need a Hawaiian hoodie, like those.
That would
be a
be
thing.
Freaking awesome, a Hawaiian print hoodie.
I'm sure I can find one.
Are there Hawaiian print BDU?
There is a company out there that is making basically what my idea had been a little while back. Remember when I did it was a Hawaiian print, but it was with a camouflage color palette. Well, that's basically what they're doing, but if you want any of their stuff, it is so stupidly overpriced, it is ridiculous.
That's the Savage Tactical or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, Savage Tacticians, I think is what it is. Yeah, it's just stupid overpriced. It's completely not worth the money. It's ridiculous. And all of their stuff is like that, where it's like, oh, did you want a t-shirt? That'll be $100 because apparently I think I'm Gucci.
Flexing on the pores.
Yeah, so lame. I had ordered a couple of things from him too, like cheaper stuff, and then I saw how high priced the rest of his crap was. Oh, hey, look, it's a Hawaiian print hoodie.
Yeah,
$25 on Amazon.
Sweet. But yeah, I had ordered some of that stuff, and then I saw the pricing of everything, and I'm like, you know what? I'm never ordering from this company again because that is absurd. No. That's when you want $115 or something for hoodies, and you want I think their armor is stupid high price too, and over $1,000 for their armor. No,
you're gonna get us cancel cultured by the foods.
Yeah.
So real quick before we actually get into the list of articles, that last one that you sent in the group chat, is that on the docket or no?
No, I just came across that one.
Yeah, we were just talking about it in the pre-show.
So I have some good ones. You saw the ones on the list, and
I did. I was just wondering if maybe we wanted to, work this one in as kind of segued off one of them other ones.
Nah, I don't want to give them credit.
Yeah, I don't really.
That's up there with the supposed attempted kidnapping of what's her face, Whitmer.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I know.
Oh, Lord.
Fuds and feds, man.
Well, speaking of FUDs and feds, I fucking got deplatformed. I got kicked off of Facebook. I'm officially a member of the Permaban Club.
The Black Balls.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Yeah. Yeah, I am finally officially permabanned. And it happened at like noon. Like it was the middle of the day. I had been using Facebook earlier, and then all of a sudden somebody sent me a message is like, did you deactivate your account? And I'm like, oh crap.
Well, mine happened between 6:05 and 6:15 at night.
At night.
Because Village Gunsmith had their nightly live when they get their big deliveries, and I watched that and was commenting on that, no problem. 5 minutes later, after the video ended, I went and did something to post something on Facebook, and boom, gone.
Session expired. Please log in on a browser on a computer in order to find out more. And all that you learn when you do that is your account has been disabled.
You're done. And then if you try,
yeah.
Go ahead. I was gonna say if you decide to try to reactivate the account, it'll say no, your account has been deactivated due to repeated violations of community standards. You are not welcome here.
We don't serve your kind here.
It took Luis like a year before they let him back on. Like he kept trying to make ones, and other people made accounts and then gave him access to them, and they got deleted. But it took him a year before he was able to have an account.
I don't care that much.
Yeah, I'm never gonna bother to go back at this point. Like it's just not, because I've had people like, oh well, you could try using like a VPN, and you could no. That's a bunch of effort for something I don't care about. Like I pulled all of my important data off weeks prior in anticipation of them doing this. So I already had everything. It got deleted, and I warned people like, dude, if I get kicked off of this, I'm never coming back. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to bother with Facebook. They don't want me. They want to turn themselves into the next Tumblr, because that's exactly what they're doing.
Yep.
Go for it, man. Turn yourself into another hyper leftist mouthpiece with so much censorship that no one uses you anymore, except for the blue faux hawked cat eye glasses fat chicks, and that's it. Go for it.
Don't forget the mohawk on top of the mohawk is the pink pussy hats.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like, if that's the crap that you want to do, like, you go for that, you go ahead and shoot yourself in the foot. I don't care.
Tumblr is like the 4chan of the left.
Well, except it has so much censorship that unlike 4chan, you can't even have any nudity or anything anymore.
That's true.
They took it all off.
You could have nudes. I mean, you could have nude like porn videos and child porn on fucking Twitter. But if you say mean things, you get deplatformed.
Right.
Yeah. Then you get removed. It's so and the thing is there was no warning before they did it. There's no suspension, none of this.
Yeah, have you had a 30-day in the last year?
In the last year, no. I've had one 24-hour in the past year.
Yeah. Yep. And that was before mine was deleted back in November. That's exactly what happened to me. I hadn't had a 30-day. I think I had a 30-day like back in February or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but I didn't have any other suspensions up until that point. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're gone.
Yep. Yeah. And they just dropped me, and there was no warnings. There was no because it would have been one thing if they'd like suspended me and been like, hey, we're suspending you. And then I would have been like, oh crap, I know the permazuck's coming. And then I would have downloaded any additional stuff like memes that maybe I didn't actually have saved or something. And I would have had that warning, and I would have been able to do that. Instead, they just nuked me, and out of nowhere and in the middle of the day. And well, I guess we're just not on Facebook anymore. It's whatever, man.
It's fascist book. It's not Facebook. It's fascist book.
Well, and keep in mind too that if you're a gamer, that the Oculus Rifts, all the new Oculus Rifts, are going to require a Facebook account to use.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So if you are like me and permabanned from Facebook, there's no point buying an Oculus. You can't use it anyway.
Yep.
Well,
I guess for me, I could use it just because I'd have it linked to Amber's account, my wife's account.
Yeah.
And then I'd I'd use it that way. But otherwise, I have no interest or use.
Yeah.
I started a channel for A Wolf in a Sheep's World on Telegram. I should add you to that one. Add you as an admin.
Yeah, because I can't admin it on Facebook anymore.
Gonna create one over on MeWe too while you're at it.
Yeah. No.
Oh, I should really create a Hootenanny Roundup on MeWe now.
You
Now
should.
that I've been kicked off,
Yeah.
I really got to do that. Slap all of my Boog memes back up on it. And...
Yeah, that's what we should do. Make Boog memes great again.
Yes.
Yes.
Make the Boog memes great again.
So, but before we get too off track there, nice little segue. Ex-Al-Qaeda recruiter on deplatforming extremists. Some will be emboldened.
No.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's like
It means massive censorship just emboldens people who don't like you
not
already.
that, but like removing people from what is considered mainstream society, which really let's say that what it is. Facebook, Twitter,
Yeah,
Instagram, those are main TikTok. I mean, except those are mainstream society these days.
yeah, they are.
Removing people from mainstream society and forcing them to seek human interaction in small, isolated, out of the way echo chambers full of other extremists. Like, how can that backfire?
How could that
I don't see
ever
any
go
possible
wrong?
way that could go wrong. It's just
Yes. Okay, so article. When Jesse Morton watched the U.S. Capitol was stormed, he recalled the ferocious faith he once had, not as a supporter of President Donald Trump, but as a jihadi recruiter on a mission from God. Like some of Trump's most ardent backers, Morton was also deplatformed by social media companies like YouTube, where he was once Al-Qaeda's most prolific English language recruiters, giving him a rare personal insight into the future they face. Quote, a lot of what we see unfolding in front of us now with regard to the far right, I experienced directly with the primary threat we were concerned with when we were jihadists. He said last week from his home in Alexandria, Virginia.
wait a second. This guy was a fucking recruiter, English language recruiter for Islamist extremists, and he lives within a stone's throw.
Well, yeah, the next,
like right across the river.
Yeah, the next sentence says he's an FBI informant.
Oh well.
Yeah, Martin served 4 years on terrorism-related charges in federal prison, where he assisted the FBI as an informant. He went on to become a research fellow at George Washington University's program on extremism, and now works as an anti-extremism activist. He was careful to note that Trump and his followers are not Islamic terrorists bent on violent jihad, but he said his experience shows that deplatforming radicals does work, if only to a point. Just eliciting a reaction from huge tech companies and powerful law enforcement agencies can feel like an intoxicating vindication, he said, and pulling charismatic troublemakers off social media certainly limits their reach. But for a smaller group of diehards, removal bolsters the same feelings of isolation, outrage, and in-group solidarity that led to radicalization in the first place. Although their numbers might go down, quote, what you see those feelings of camaraderie, those feelings of community, those feelings of meaning and significance in the movement, as if you're having an effect, he said. And you also feel emboldened. You feel powerful. Which, completely understandable. Like,
well, I mean,
I feel it's the same sort of feeling that you get like when you come into the libertarian movement or when you come into the anarchist movement. You feel like you're it's like you develop a faux moral superiority, and you do feel more powerful when you first come into the libertarian anarchist movement, because you do want to do things. You feel you can change the world if we just did X, Y, and Z, right? Everything would be better, blah 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 blah. It's the same way, and this time they're doing like isolated echo chambers, which is only it's only gonna feed the feeding.
Well, and that's especially when you start talking about how everybody's, especially the left, the people that are running these major social media platforms, the ones they're all sitting there going, we all need to come together, we all need to unite, and then they're intentionally separating everybody.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't agree with us, or if you don't toe the line with us, we don't want anything to do with you.
Well, their idea of uniting is we need to unite under the banner of the things that I support.
Yes.
Right.
What they really mean, it's double speak. What they really mean is not we should all unite regardless of our differences. It's all of you people who disagree with me need to set aside your differences from me and just follow what I say.
Right.
That's what they mean.
And that's kind of what I was kind of alluding to, is this is what they're after. They want to create a one gigantic echo chamber for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That way they're all on the same page, while pushing anybody that disagrees with them off to the side where they have to be in smaller groups.
Well, when you think about it, I mean, and the banning, like as soon as I mentioned that I was permabanned, right? Like everyone's like, yeah, hey, welcome to the club, and
right.
And it's kind of a validation that clearly you're pissing the right people off with what you're saying, because otherwise they wouldn't go after you. So obviously,
and it's even more
successful.
right, and it's even more so a validation when things like what happened to you and me, Andrew, last week happened.
Yeah,
where
exactly.
Andrew I had feds show up at my house, and Andrew had a tail.
Yeah,
Andrew had a tail. I mean, when stuff like that happens, at that point, we're like, okay, so we must be getting under somebody's feathers if they're feeling the need to show up and try to intimidate.
That's what was mentioned. Talking to I mentioned I had a friend that was also visited outside of you guys, and Derica said she saw some people post about it on Facebook, and what it came down to is you guys were flagged by Facebook. Right. Like you were blackballed. You were kicked off Facebook for extremist views or whatever. And Facebook flagged you. And like right after the Capitol protests, is like Facebook said, "Hey, go look at these people."
Yeah.
And that's you guys got looked at.
And Facebook is essentially a voluntary intelligence collection agency. You volunteer to sign up for their system so they can collect intel on you.
Well, yeah, let's not forget that they're connected to the NSA.
Well, right.
The PRISM program and all this other stuff. So
yeah, they directly feed the content of Facebook Messenger to the FBI.
Yeah, they actually
and that's what I was getting at.
They actually talk about Facebook in the Snowden movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yep.
So
I believe they mentioned Google in there too.
Mm-hmm. All the things. Yeah. Let's see. After suspension. Okay, so I want to go down a few paragraphs. He said, they're talking about booting people off Twitter, and he said, quote, "When we first started doing this with jihadists, people like to say it was a whack-a-mole. You know, you were just knock one down, another group would pop up. The research that I've done and the subsequent people who have demonstrated it, that's not the case. Burgess' analysis also backs up Morton's experience that a heady cocktail of isolation and vindication risks accelerating the violent reaction of a small minority who put the effort into move to more private platforms." Right.
So when you silence people who have a different opinion from you, it may make them feel disenfranchised to the point where they feel compelled to violence.
Yes, actually, quote, "You're only talking to people who echo the same views and excessively talk about violence and anger and hate. Then there's a reasonable chance that being in that environment could radicalize you even more." Morton said that a toxic feedback loop could easily promote the notion that, quote, "there is no other recourse but violence as a result of us being unable to express our ideas."
Yeah, I mean, there's only so long that people can feel voiceless before they will find a freaking voice.
Right. And well, yeah, what is it? It's the jury box, the ammo box, the ballot box, and the soapbox, right?
Yep.
Well, we know that the ballot box doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the jury box doesn't work.
We know the soapbox doesn't work.
And then you take away people's soapbox.
Leaves
There's
them
only
with
one box to reach for.
It leaves them with exactly one more box
I hate
left.
you guys. I hate you guys so much. if you're listening and not watching the video, they both reached down and pulled up ammo cans full of beautiful lead and brass.
Invest in valuable metals.
Buy lead.
Yeah, buy lead and brass.
Hashtag cries in Californian.
It's not our fault you decided to stay in that communist fucking state.
Right.
But I mean, that's the thing, though, is like it. Obviously, I mean, that's what do we know about sound waves, right? We call them echo chambers. Well, what do we know about sound waves? If you keep bouncing them and bouncing them and bouncing them in a small space, they wind up louder. They're more intense. So if you take all of this, anybody who is trying to say something and they disagree and they feel disenfranchised and anything else, and then you stick that sound into a box where all it has is the same sound from other places and it's all bouncing around, of course it just gets steadily more and more and more intense. That's an obvious thing. And what they're doing is simultaneously, and I guarantee you that's why we wound up with the FBI showing up at our doors, is because they are worried now, because now they can't track us as easily. They can't monitor our activities as easily. And now they're worried that we're going to be going to, to communicating in a way that they can't monitor, that's nothing but people who think like us. And it's simply going to push things ever further. Well, and they're going, oh shit, we done fucked up.
They can't monitor us on the surface. Right. We all know with the prison programs and all that good stuff, if you use a commercially viable product such as my LG cell phone or my Lenovo laptop, they can monitor all that. It doesn't matter what program you use, or whether you're on Skype or Telegram or any other sort of encrypted chat, they can monitor the going-ons. However,
I'll agree with you, but I have to disagree with you on some points. Only because there are some that use an asymmetric encryption, which, I mean,
all they gotta do is take screenshots.
That's the thing. They have to have console access, and there's no guarantee that they have that if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
that's the thing. Is if you really want to talk about things that would maybe go against Brandenburg v. Ohio, you want to make sure that you take proper precaution.
Well, yeah. And I mean, the thing is too, is like, admittedly, like on, say, group chats on Keybase, which is, end-to-end encryption, there's no guarantee that the other people in that group are not feds.
Yes.
Right.
So
same with Telegram, same with Signal, same with
same with a group of friends getting together and talking in an isolated place. There's no guarantee that one of them isn't a fed. So
or doesn't have thick enough skin for it and decides that you know what, this is too rich for me, I'm gonna turn them in.
Yeah. So I mean, informants are a regular thing. Like, everybody knows about everybody knows about the informants that were in the mob. They know about the informants that were in
what was it, the Mauer Wildlife Refuge? Wasn't it like 16 of the 22 people turned federal informant or something like that?
Yeah, like just tons of them wound up going over. I mean, this is a risk, an inherent risk in anything. If you're trying to talk completely privately, that somebody's going to tell somebody else what you said. And so, I mean, that's an acknowledged risk. But if you're coming at it from the world of the intelligence community, it is way harder to put somebody in that isolated group that isn't going to raise suspicion than it is to just watch when people are just talking openly. Like, it's way more difficult.
It's OPSEC PERSEC is something that a lot of people lack. Well, and it's the reason a lot of people get caught. But where was I going with that? I was going MeWe. Like, we talked about MeWe a little bit before the show. MeWe, there's an article came out the other day that MeWe picked up like 2.5 million people since January 6th.
Yeah.
All right. To get to, because MeWe is supposedly an uncensored. Like, I haven't seen anybody censored from it yet, but
well, and not only have they picked up 2.5 million since January 6th, but since November 6th, they've picked up close to 10 million,
which is probably more than. Probably triples the activity on MeWe.
Yeah, it's gotten huge, and it's because everybody's migrating away from platforms that'll censor them.
Right, and I mean, I remember, I want to say it was right around Thanksgiving time. MeWe, which would have been about 2 weeks after I got my permazuck. like my app kept crashing. I would try to access any notifications and stuff, and it just kept crashing. And then they put out a release in email format to all of their current members. Hey, we're in the process of adding a metric ton of servers in order to facilitate all of these new members that we just picked up.
Yeah, we've been so small for so long, and then all of a sudden, oh shit! So, yeah,
It's
we
a
need
big
to.
one.
Yeah, we need to maybe go out and buy a server farm because clearly we're gonna need it. And look at that. I mean, that's a symptom of what these big platforms that are deplatforming everybody. That is a symptom of what they're doing. Everyone's moving to these other things, but the only people who are moving are the people that are, talking about things that are anti-government or talking about, things that are, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, hyper conservative and pro Trump and all hail Grand Emperor Cheeto and like all of that crap. But that's the only people that are moving, which means that what's going to happen pretty soon is that those other platforms they're migrating to are just echo chambers for all of those ideas. And then the platforms they left are just echo chambers for the hyper left ideas. And all you're doing is encouraging an increased divide in society.
Right. I don't know. It's infuriating we're supposed to, and I emphasize the term supposed to be able to speak. Even if we have differing views on things, we're supposed to be able to speak amongst one another.
Yeah.
But these platforms are
there's people yelling at us right now. I know that are just going, oh, they're private companies, blah blah blah. They do what they want. If you take government money, you're not a private company.
Yeah, and look at first of all, Facebook not only takes enormous amounts of government money, I mean billions of dollars, but on top of that, they actively work with the government.
Right.
That is not a private company. That is just a semi-privatized arm of the government at that point. There's no private anything there.
Yeah,
it's just public money.
The fun side of the NSA.
That's all it is. I mean, that's not a private company, guys. That is a public thing. That is a government thing. And Instagram, don't forget, is owned by Facebook, and Twitter isn't any better actually than Facebook is. I mean, they're slightly better about censoring, but not by a whole lot.
You can have child porn on Twitter, but you can't say mean things.
And if you have an actual open platform, like, so far, I'll say MeWe has been an open platform. If you have a supposed open platform, you're going to run across things that are obviously outside of the what established norms of what you would consider okay.
Yeah, and what is it Title 230? Is that the law that I'm thinking of that says Section 230 that basically that allows a platform, right, to be not responsible for the content that's posted on there. Remember when Google got sued over the jihadi stuff that was getting posted on Google, and they got sued, and on like YouTube, they got sued, and then they successfully argued, well, under Section 230, I don't have to censor it. I'm not responsible for it. You can't blame me for it. I'm just a platform. You can't blame me for what's on here. But then now Facebook and Google and all these companies are actively censoring things and taking it upon themselves to do the censoring, which could theoretically be used to argue against them having Section 230 protection, because they're acting like a publisher and not like a platform, because they are censoring content.
Yeah, they're actively curating the content that's supposed to be available for all their members.
Section 230 is a piece of internet legislation in the United States passed into law as part of the Communications Decency Act of 1996. Section 230 generally provides immunity for website publishers from third-party content. At its core, Section 230 provides immunity from liability for providers and users of a, quote, interactive computer service who publish information providers by third party.
Right. Because they're a platform, not a publisher, is the argument.
Good right. Samaritan protection from civil liability for operators, and the removal or moderation of third-party material they deem obscene or offensive, even of constitutionally protected speech, as long as it's done in, quote, good faith.
And because they're starting to ban people based on political affiliation and political speech,
the good faith clause goes away.
Yeah, the good faith clause could theoretically no longer apply. It hasn't been used that way yet, but there is a definite door opening there where that they're opening themselves.
Yep.
Where they may wind up being sued and held liable for things because they're not acting on good faith anymore. They're acting as a publisher, which is actively curating content. Therefore, they no longer fall under the third-party content clause of 230.
Yeah. Back to the article. They said, toxic feedback loop, blah, 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 blah. They agreed that big tech's attempts to rein in right-wing extremism has seemed more reactive than preventive, and that crafting a consistent set of rules around account suspensions would help companies undercut the feeling among censored groups that they are being singled out. Eye roll.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Morton and Berger said that there was a substantial difference between deplatforming of jihadis and deplatforming of right-wing extremists. Quote, their bases of support. While the jihadi recruiters in the United States did not have any substantial political backing, right-leaning voters are legion, encompassing multiple causes and ideologies, and they can count on many elected officials to defend them. So,
right. I love that it's everything is, it's only right-wing extremists. It's right-wing extremists. Those are the people that they're worried about, except that they're deplatforming libertarians and they're deplatforming anarchists. And
was it Bannon that said that libertarians, they're going after libertarians?
Yeah,
libertarians are a threat, apparently. We're as bad as there's an article that we're going to get to about the Hawaiian shirts. And they said, what is it, like Nazis, white supremacists, and libertarians.
Yeah,
wearing the Hawaiian shirts.
Well, yeah, and I love that they steer clear of ever mentioning anarchists with stuff because since the people, the ANCOMs claim to be anarchists, they don't want to go ahead and offend those people because that's part of their support base. So they always they eschew saying anything about anarchists, and instead it's those damned right-wing extremists and libertarians.
You want to just get into that one? Get into the Boogaloo shirt one? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The Aloha shirts.
Same shit.
That's what they call it, the Aloha shirt.
Oh, that's what they're supposed to be called, as Aloha shirts.
Yeah.
There.
Aloha shirts. Aloha shirts on Boogaloos link symbol of peace to violence.
On Boogaloos.
This is an AP article, by the way.
Yep.
Surprise!
Yep. Tell that at all.
People following a violent movement that promotes a second U.S. Civil War or the breakdown of modern society have been showing up at recent protests across the nation armed and wearing tactical gear. But the anti-government Boogaloo movement has adopted an unlikely public and online symbol, the so-called Hawaiian shirt. The often brightly colored island-themed garment known in Hawaii as an Aloha shirt is to people across the world synonymous with the laid-back lifestyle. But in Hawaii, it has an association with Oahu, the native Hawaiian spirit of love, compassion, and mercy. The shirts are being worn by militant followers of the Boogaloo philosophy, the antithesis of Aloha, at demonstrations about coronavirus lockdowns, racial injustice, and more recently, the presidential election. Hey, I got to say, the love of freedom, the compassion for your fellow man and their small businesses, and the mercy of not having people suffer.
Yeah, wanting mercy for
yeah.
people, where we're allowed to help each other, where government doesn't get in the way, where government isn't oppressing people, demanding a more merciful world. Yeah, that's completely in line with the spirit of the Boog Boys, and yet
it's just spicy aloha.
Yeah, it's spicy
it's aloha with a little curry.
It's aloha meets Mauna Kea.
There you go.
The fucking volcano.
Oh yeah, it's spicy aloha. I'm gonna steal that.
I
term.
had to change. Sorry.
So, Boogaloo is a loosely affiliated far-right movement. God, I am so sick
of being called far-right.
Of being called far-right. Like I know. There was an article that was posted about me. We getting 2.5 million new followers, and it said 2.5 million is like far-right. 2.5 million followers, right? And I was like, I had to comment because I normally don't comment on these things. That's not my thing. I'm not that kind of person. And I was like, this person knows me very well. And I commented, and I was like, according to the mainstream media, according to the faux moral superior technocracy, I'm considered far right wing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know. We all are, and that's because supposedly holding any kind of moral compass that would say that coercive violence is wrong is, according to them, a right-wing ideal, when in fact it's just somebody who's logically fucking consistent.
We have so many far right-wing ideals, like wanting the decriminalization of all drugs and wanting government to stay the hell out of who wants to marry who, and
like loving freedom, having compassion for your fellow man, and wanting mercy.
Yeah, wanting people to be able to just do what they want to do as long as they're not hurting anybody is apparently far right wing now. Apparently, the idea of freedom and liberty is now far right wing. And
meanwhile,
if you've ever met anybody who's far right wing, they do not love freedom.
No,
they worship the boots that the goddamn military and police wear on a daily fucking basis.
What did Nazi stand for? What was that term?
Was it? I think it was like National Socialists.
National Socialist Workers Party.
Yeah, the National Socialist German Workers Party. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Gosh.
Back to the article. Boogaloo is a loosely affiliated far-right movement that includes a variety of extremist factions and political views. The name is in reference to a slang term for a sequel. In this case, a Second World War or Second Civil War. Quote, you have everyone from neo-Nazis and white nationalists to libertarians, said Cassie Miller, senior research analyst at the Southern Poverty Law Center, which tracks hate groups in the U.S.
Hate groups. By hate groups, they mean anyone who isn't hyper fucking left.
Right.
If you don't have your pronouns in your bio, you are far right.
Oh yeah, I forget, man. When I go through, like, when I'm swiping through freaking Tinder, dude, like, I'm telling you, if I see somebody listed their pronouns, that is left immediately. I'm like, and nope, we will not get along.
That seems like an ironic statement.
Yeah, like, are you kidding me? It's especially if it's like they're pronouns they them. Fuck you. All right.
Like, I love
you.
Libertarians are grouped in with neo-Nazis and white nationalists.
Mm-hmm.
Like Eric July is now a white nationalist.
Oh yeah, I saw.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love whenever I see him post screenshots and shit, or he talks about them on his shows all the time about how somebody goes, "You're a white supremacist," and then he posts a picture of himself, and then the people.
He's still the only person that I've seen actually make someone delete their Twitter.
Like delete their Twitter.
Like right before the election, there was some white college girl who was arguing with him, and she's like, "You need to shut up and let the black people speak."
He posted a picture of himself.
And he posted a video saying, "Bitch, I am black." She deleted her Twitter.
Her entire Twitter deleted.
Yep.
Well, yeah, because he gets. I watched somebody the other day. Some white, very pale white chick, called him a Nazi, and he was like, and said something about how he should be ashamed of himself or something, blah blah blah, and he's like, says the white chick who just called a black anarchist a Nazi.
But he posts screenshots and shit like that all the time when he's doing his videos.
Oh, yeah.
And I just can't. I love watching them just to see where he's owned these supposedly morally superior woke white motherfuckers who don't know their elbow from their asshole in the real world.
Oh, did you see the one that I commented on, that I had tweeted to him, where some dude said, "Imagine being so stupid that you think Biden's actually going to bomb the Middle East." And he's like, "There's no way this is a real tweet." Was his QRT. And I said, unfortunately, you have to realize that these people actually think this way, even though we are now 5 days into the Biden administration and are still currently bombing Yemen.
Yep. Yemen, Afghanistan, Iraq,
Syria,
and there's talk of going into Iran.
Yeah, like, and I'm like, no, but it's only wrong. It's only actual bombing if Republicans do it. Remember, Obama won a Nobel Peace Prize while actively dropping bombs on 7 different countries.
Right.
Yeah. You have everyone from neo-Nazis and white nationalists to libertarians, blah blah blah. And while ideologically there may be some differentiation among people who identify with the movement, what unites them is their interest in having complete access to firearms and the belief that this country is heading towards a civil war. Gee, I wonder why they believe this thing.
Talking about this increased divide.
Not only that, and we've talked at length, ad nauseum, on this fucking channel about how the current climate in the U.S. mirrors so incredibly well the climate before the Civil War, before the Revolution, the climate in France before the French Revolution,
the Weimar Republic.
Weimar Republic. This is so. I mean, history repeats itself. History always fucking repeats itself.
Yeah.
Hold on. Because the more things change, the more they stay the same. Isn't that the old adage, Andrew?
This gets even better.
If you say it gets better, I'm going to reach through this screen and fucking.
It does get better.
Hang on, let me refill my glass because this is going to take a bit.
Oh no!
Of
course it gets better.
Miller said that those who follow Boogaloo, sometimes referred to as Boogaloo Boys, and she did spell it Bois.
I'll give her credit for that.
Believe that, quote, people need to rise up against the government, what they see as tyrannical and essentially irredeemable, and that the only solution to righting what they see as their perceived grievances is to overthrow the state.
I love how they're perceived grievances.
Yeah, that is an awful lot of qualifying words in there, like what they see as their perceived grievances and what they perceive and they think. Like, there's an awful lot of, but I mean, it like implied, like, but I mean, we reasonable people, we don't think that, right, guys? Like,
all right, hold on.
The problem is most of these are the same dumbass sons of bitches who were burning cities down last spring and summer because of, oh my God, the government is violent and they're killing our people.
Yeah, and
now shit.
See, and didn't we say at the time on this show, we said, wait until they wind up with a leftist in the White House again, and all of the sudden government will be their undying hero again.
Oh, I know it. Absolutely.
That's where the domestic terrorism thing comes from. Yep. Is them trying to protect Big Daddy government. Yeah, wait.
Right.
Those adhering to the ones
they're the very ones that were attacking Big Daddy government all fucking summer.
Those adhering to the philosophy often target law enforcement, Miller said, Because the police are the most accessible symbol of the government at public gatherings.
They're the goddamn cudgel that they slam us all over the fucking head with every goddamn
and
day.
They're the ones that you were just attacking, shooting, and burning down the stations of a few months ago, asshats.
People affiliated with the movement have also been linked to real-world violence, including a string of domestic terrorism plots. The movement has also been promoted by white supremacists. There's that term again. But many supporters insist that they're not truly advocating for violence. Attempts by the Associated Press to reach out to people associated with the movement were unsuccessful.
God,
no shit. They don't want to fucking talk to you.
Wait. If you look at their online spaces, their rhetoric is extremely violent, Miller said. Quote, a lot of what is kind of under the veneer of irony of humor, but there's something very real to all of it.
I just want to point out that
don't forget, Biden just killed the Keystone Pipeline permit and put out of work like 2,000 welders.
Just welders with dump trucks
with access to
bulldozers.
Yeah. If you look at their online spaces, their rhetoric is extremely violent. You can't look at their online spaces because they've been fucking deplatformed.
Yeah, you removed all of our online spaces, asshats. How would you know? You don't know anymore. You can't see it. And even if you did, even if you looked at it and you want to sit there and you want to call us violent for saying, hey, like the time to, just let government violence go is over, like something needs to be done. I seem to remember an awful lot of people talking not that long ago on the left about murdering Republicans and how, well, once we took the White House, we're going to line you all up on walls. And
I remember it wasn't that long ago. You had a Bernie bro attack Republican members of Congress at a softball diamond.
Yeah.
Softball practice with an AR-15.
Yeah. Started shooting
with SKS.
Was an SKS, but either way, he started shooting.
Which makes perfect sense because they're all commies anyway, so it would make sense that they'd come after him with a comm block weapon. But still, he showed up with a semi-automatic rifle as a avowed communist and leftist and started shooting Republicans at a ball diamond. But we're the violent ones.
Yeah. But we, the American mainstream political left isn't violent somehow. We're the violent ones. The ones who are like, hey, seriously, like government's violent and awful and inherently violence and we need to get rid of it. We're violent, but the ones who are like, oh, hey, let's continue to use government violence against people we don't like at every turn. They're not violent. They're the compassionate ones. Because, it's so compassionate and unviolent to advocate for the armed robbery of your neighbors.
Don't forget, they were openly supportive of the rioting and looting and the, quote, most peaceful protests.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
While absolutely condemning the events of January 6th.
Yep.
Well, not only that, absolutely condemning a 17-year-old kid who had to use deadly force to protect himself from their fucking violence.
From a pedophile and a child abuser or something like that, right?
A pedophile and a woman abuser.
Yeah, and a wife beater like that.
And a wife beater.
Yeah, and the one tried to bash his skull in with a piece of wood and steel.
And got a very well placed shot right through the chest for it, which was a thing of beauty.
Yeah, but he was actively attempting to kill him. If you think that a skateboard is not a deadly weapon, I could show you exactly what a skateboard can do to a human head. I'll just go get a coconut and a skateboard and let me show you what could have happened to his skull if he hadn't fought back.
All right.
But we're the violent ones.
Right.
All right. Go down a few articles. There's a bunch of rhetoric and blah, 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 blah.
A bunch of fear porn.
Yeah, a bunch of, not even fear porn, it's just liberal rhetoric. Okay, many native Hawaiians share a sense of frustration with the U.S. and state government because of the way the Hawaiian kingdom was overthrown. They have long fought against the exploitation and commercialization of their land by large corporations and government entities. but in a mostly peaceful way. Quote, Hawaiians are facing desecration of our burial of our sacred places, but it is our choice of how we want to respond and address the powers that be. If you want the end result to be based in peace, you have to move in peace and move in aloha. Okay, now here this is the paragraph. This is the paragraph that this is the frustration.
Are Andrew and I going to have an collective aneurysm because of this?
Not on the surface, but probably. Quote, Aloha is about reducing suffering, reducing and de-escalating anger. It's human to become angry. It's human to feel frustrated. It's human to want to lash out, but it is also human to find compassion. Isn't that exactly what we want?
Exactly the fucking point.
What the? Oh my god.
Well, and you'll notice. Oh, well, they're really frustrated. These native Hawaiians, they're really frustrated about this commercialization and use of their symbols by the government, the same government that the people who are wearing the Aloha shirts, which, by the way, were developed for the purposes of being sold to American tourists as they came to Hawaii. So if you're calling that a whole traditional Hawaiian thing, then Spam and Reese's is also a fucking traditional Hawaiian thing.
They can keep that part.
Yeah, it's weird. It's not bad, but weird. But
I will say, not a real big fan of it. But teach their own.
Yeah, but I mean, like this, these in the same sentence, well, set of sentences, the same paragraph. She's saying that Hawaiians hate what the government did to them. And then saying that people who hate the government that Hawaiians don't want them to use their symbols.
Yes.
At the same, yeah. I mean, they're running around in circles with their statements.
Well, because that's the only way you can hold these positions. You can only hold the positions of these people when you are willing to ignore the meanings of words that you're using and hold directly conflicting ideas in your head simultaneously and holding them both to be true. This is a symptom of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is I can't even wrap my head around. I mean, it's like these are the same kinds of people who wrote about how, well, in order to address domestic terrorism, we need to confront multiracial whiteness. I mean, the fact that phrase exists shows you how insane these people are.
Well, it wasn't AOC. Didn't she have the quote about it? It's more important to be morally right than factually correct.
Yep.
Yes.
So there.
Yep, that was AOC. And that's it right there.
It's more important to be woke as fuck.
Faux woke. They are not woke. They're faux
absolutely woke. Well, I use woke in that context with them because that's how they look at themselves.
They are for woke.
Yes. So it's more important for those, like,
half of them couldn't spell faux correctly.
Very true. But it's more important for them to believe that they're woke as shit because they're supposedly on the right side of I fucking hate that phrase. The right side of history. I fucking hate that phrase.
Well, you gotta remember, history is written by the victors, and that's the difference between a terrorist and a freedom fighter. Right? Perspective.
It's who wins.
Right. It's who wins. And but
because, I mean,
instead of actually having to back up your position with facts and actual information that's true, it's more important to put up this wonderful facade of wine and roses and go, this is what it is. No, it isn't, you fucking idiots.
All right, let's move on to this next one. There's this one and there's one more, and then we can get off this subject. But this one again sets up everything we've said so far sets up for the following article, not this article, but the following article, and that's the one that's going to really that'll be the fun one, at least.
Are we going to do another Brandenburg intro before that one, just because?
No, not. I don't think so. I don't think so. We do we do bring up Cliven Bundy, and there's some stress, some stupidity to that article, but this one, Tulsi Gabbard, domestic terrorism bill is quote targeting almost half of our country.
What?
Yeah. You don't say. Shocked face.
Tulsi
Absolutely
Gabbard,
shocked
the
face.
former Democratic representative from Hawaii, on Friday expressed concerns that the proposed measure to combat domestic terrorism could be used to undermine civil liberties.
No.
What?
Are you suggesting that tyrants may use a claim to be defending against internal enemies to do tyrannical things? I mean,
gasps in 9/11.
I mean, history definitely doesn't back that up.
You got Operation Northwoods just flashing in your head right now in big bold letters.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, the
USS Liberty.
Yeah, the USS Liberty incident, or the whole thing recently with Iran and the drones, or the what is it, the USS, I can't remember, that blew up in Havana Harbor, or the Lusitania, which was a valid military target because it was carrying weapons, or I mean the list goes on and on and on.
Gabbard's comments came during the appearance on Fox News Primetime when host Brian Kilmeade asked her if she was, quote, surprised they were pushing forward with this extra surveillance on would-be domestic terror. Quote, it's so dangerous, as you guys have been talking about. This is the issue with all Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Libertarians should be extremely concerned about, especially because we don't have to guess about where this goes or how this ends, Gabbard said. She continued, quote, when you have people like former CIA Director John Brennan openly talking about how he's spoken with or heard from appointees and nominees in the Biden administration who are already starting to look across our country for these types of movements similar to the insurgencies they've seen overseas, that in his words, he says make up this unholy alliance of religious extremists, racist bigots, he lists a few others, and at the end, even libertarians.
Ugh.
Yet again, see, and this is setting up because libertarians are one of those dissenting voices that, although they're not completely correct, are more correct than the Republicans or Democrats, and therefore are a threat to the status quo as long as they exist.
I was gonna say, as long as the libertarians are out there, they run the establishment of the Republicans and the Democrats run the risk of that Overton window shifting ever so slightly away from where they want it.
Yeah. I think libertarians need to start carrying hammers and throwing them through the libertarian or through the Overton windows. But that's just me.
I don't disagree.
She said her concern lies in how officials will define the characteristics that are searching for in these potential threats. Quote, what characteristics are we looking for as we are building the profile of potential extremists? What are we talking about? Religious extremists? Are we talking about Christians, evangelical Christians? What is a religious extremist? Is it somebody who is pro-life? Where do we take this? Gabbard said. She said the proposed legislation. Yeah, she said the proposed legislation could create a, quote, very dangerous undermining of our civil liberties, our freedom, and our Constitution, and targeting of almost half the country. You start looking at obviously have to be a white person, obviously likely male, libertarians, anyone who loves freedom, liberty, maybe has an American flag outside his house, or people who, attended a Trump rally, Gabbard said. Domestic terrorism.
This is their way of lashing out at anybody, and I mean absolutely anybody who disagrees with them in any way. Well, you might have even voted for Biden. You might have been the most hardline leftist, but if there's one issue out there that you disagree with them on, you are an extremist.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is don't forget, it's not like this is coming out of left field. They warned us and have been warning people for years that they're going to do this.
Not only is this not right out of left field, but this was a 20,000-page bill that was submitted the day after what happened at the Capitol building.
Yep.
Exactly. Which
so
means
they
it's
had
been...
this prepared.
Yep.
Like Dianne Feinstein. Like Dianne Feinstein has admitted several times that she has gun control bills already written and sitting in her desk, just waiting for an incident so that she can sign them and submit them.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, that's
because you never let a good tragedy go to waste.
Well, and they keep in mind with this too. Yeah, but I mean, keep in mind with this too is that they've been openly saying they were going to do this, because remember, I mean, it's been 4 years that the lefts, the people in the political left have been saying openly, well, when it's our turn, then we'll get revenge. Remember that quote that we'll get revenge when we're back in the White House, and we'll show you and we'll punish you, and it will be our turn to show you who's boss. And they've been saying openly for years that they're going to do this stuff. We've been talking about it for years, that this is what was coming. As soon as a Democrat got into the White House, people called us all nuts. And then the moment there's a Democrat in the White House, this is exactly what happens. Oh gosh, weren't we crazy conspiracy theorists?
The Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act of 2021 was introduced in the House earlier this week in the aftermath of the rioting at the U.S. Capitol earlier this month that left 5 dead. Quote, unlike after 9/11, the threat that's reared its ugly head on January 6th is domestic terror groups and extremists, often racially motivated, violent individuals. Representative Brad Schneider, Democrat at Illinois, said in a statement announcing the bipartisan legislation. Quote,
America, he's out of fucking Illinois.
Quote, America must be vigilant to combat these radicalized to violence, and the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act gives our government the tools to identify, monitor, and thwart their illegal activities. Combating the threat of domestic terrorism and white supremacy is not a Democrat or Republican issue, not left versus right or urban versus rural. Domestic terrorism is an American issue, a serious threat that we can and must address together. That is also a quote from him. You guys, so come on now.
We must watch out for the Jews and the Gypsies and the communists and anarchists in the Greater Germany area that may attack the German people. I mean, this is blatant.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's saying. He's just targeting everybody who doesn't fit their nice little Jello mold of leftism and communism.
This is directly out of the playbook of the fascists and the National Socialists and the communists. This is directly out of their playbook. I mean, don't forget that if you were denounced in the Soviet Union, if one of your neighbors denounced you as having counter-revolutionary sympathies and saying things that were counter-revolutionary, you were just arrested based on that. They're setting up exactly that. That's what he just said is saying. Well, anybody who is counter-revolutionary, anybody who is against this new regime that we installed with 25,000 soldiers, fences, concrete barriers.
And let's not forget that in our country, in this country, like, we are guilty until proven innocent, right? That's why we're arrested, and that's why we're booked and arrested, and then have to bail out before we go to trial, right?
Yeah.
So all they have to do is say terrorist, 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 right? Which is the new she's a witch, right? And then you have to fight or get burned at the stake.
Even that, I mean, you could say the new terrorist in this, especially in this context, is the new Jew in 2021. I mean, that's exactly what they're saying. They're saying anybody that doesn't agree with them is the modern day Jew.
Well, you guys remembered about neo-McCarthyism.
I was just gonna say, with this whole thing, I feel like they should establish a commission maybe to determine if people are domestic
run by some senators.
Terrorists. Yeah, have some senators. It could, and he was talking about it being an American issue, which would make you un-American if you did that, and if you had some members of the House maybe in charge of it, it could be like a House Un-American Affairs Committee, maybe. And talking about McCarthyism, people, if you're unfamiliar with HUAC, McCarthyism.
Yes.
And fun fact with McCarthyism, that some of the highest profile people in Hollywood collaborated with the McCarthyites. Like Walt Disney turned in a bunch of his animators for being
John Wayne. John Wayne
communist.
was a huge.
Yeah, he helped. Let's see who else. There was
Reagan. Reagan was.
Yep, Reagan also went way out of his way to make sure that members of the film community who he felt were communists were turned in to HUAC and things. And like this is exactly that. And if you are,
the only difference is in this case the pendulum swung the other way.
Yeah,
it's the communists coming after those enjoying free or that want freedom.
Like 85% of Congress would get sent to jail under McCarthy.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
He'd be like communist. I
mean, even the vast majority of those with that magical R next to their name.
Oh, a lot.
Like, oh yeah, you're absolutely every last one.
All major universities in the United States would be shut down for propagating communist propaganda. So, I mean, think about this. Like, this is just a mirror universe, new timeline version of McCarthyism. That's all this is.
So this is neo McCarthyism?
Yeah, neo McCarthyism.
Yeah, there we go.
This is retro neo. I think it's retro neo McCarthyism. It's. I mean, because it's McCarthyism in reverse. Now it's the communists worrying about people who want freedom. So it's, I mean,
God, how sad is that? How sad is that statement?
30 years removed from the end of the Cold War, and the communists are now the ones in charge of the U.S.
Well, they warned us they were going to do that.
Well, absolutely. Everybody, all three of us, and probably the bulk of our listeners, all knew it was coming. We all knew it was coming.
Yeah,
it's just the people out there right now that still have their heads in the sand about more Republicans and more Democrats. Oh my God!
We need to have an episode where we just talk about that, about the education system and how statism starts at home. And
I'm on board.
I'm
on board. I have to admit. And this is a bit of a personal thing, but I have to admit, I'm really impressed. So in the lead up to the selection of this past year, my daughter was all, Orange man bad, Biden good. Within the first, week or so of within, a few days before and even here after the inauguration, I've been showing her all the things that Biden's been doing since he was inaugurated, and she goes, "He's just as bad." I was like,
"Ding!" No,
I was like, "What do you think I've been trying to tell you for the last year and a half?"
Meet the new boss, same as the old boss,
with both fingers in the air.
I mean, but I think that finally woke her up to the point where she's like, "This is." Does it matter who's there? It's like,
no, it doesn't.
It doesn't matter.
Mean, but we saw that in Wisconsin too, though. Remember when Evers, Tony the Tyrant, got elected to replace Walker, where everyone was just like, Walker bad, and then just voted for Evers, even though he was completely unqualified, and the man is a fucking tyrant, and he got fired from his job in charge of the Board of Education for a reason. And
not only that, Andrew, but he, if I remember correctly, he was escorted from the premises. Now, I may be wrong on this. Don't quote me on it. But if I remember correctly, he was escorted out of the Toma School District where he used to be the superintendent.
Yeah.
Because he may have done some things that were uncouth.
Yeah, I mean,
meanwhile, the community of Toma, when he got elected, was like, "Yay! Hey, our former superintendent got elected to the governorship. He has a local." Who fucking cares? He's a piece of shit.
Well, yeah, see, and that was the thing is no one noticed that he was bad because they didn't bother to look. They were like, oh, well, at least he's not Walker.
And that's exactly what happened with Biden and Harris.
Yeah,
he's
and
not
that's
Trump.
exactly the same thing. Oh, well, at least he's not Trump. And like I encountered so many times where I brought up, like, you do understand that Biden, you know, has this in his history and this in his history, and he's voted for this, and Kamala's history is this, and she's done this, and you know, and I go through all that, and people be like, oh, I didn't even know that. But I mean, at least he's not Trump.
Well, I just got into that the other day with a coworker. One of my coworkers, she avowed Biden person, absolutely hates Trump. And all I said to her was like, you realize that Kamala is going to end up as the president sometime in the next 4 years. Biden ain't going to make it to the end of this term. He's just not. He's either going to die of old age, Kamala's going to push him down the stairs, whatever's going to happen.
25th Amendment.
And I was like, you realize, look at what Kamala did when she was AG. Was she AG of California, or was she just a prosecutor in the Bay Area? I can't remember. But where she was extending prisoner sentences in order to get the free labor.
She purposely hid evidence to keep innocent people in jail.
Yeah, she hid exculpatory evidence during trials. I mean, that's why she was removed from her appointment. She wasn't you can't do that, and she was doing that because, well, we need people in the prisons so that we can make them work on behalf of the state, because we need, apparently, Massa need his slaves.
Right. I mean, and the thing is most of them were black.
We're way off track now.
Yeah,
of course we are. But we're off track. But at the same time, it all comes back to this whole idea of, if you don't agree with Samasa, I mean, there's a reason why Andrew and I had feds at our homes in the last 2 weeks.
So, all right,
I mean, it comes right back to that.
Yeah, let's get on this next article. This next article, it's written by High Country News, which I had not heard of, so I had to look them up. They're an independent, non-profit news media source, right? So they're a 501c3, based out of Colorado, and they write literally strictly about issues facing the Western United States.
Okay.
Right, but they are a non-profit, so they don't really have.
They don't have a vested interest.
Well, they have a vested interest, of course, but they don't write for profit. So
less of a vested interest.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. This is High Country News. This is written by Carl Sagerstrom. This came out January 8th. It's titled "The Washington D.C. Siege Had Western Roots and Consequences." Right, and its history and the growing power of right-wing extremism points to the volatile future for the West during the Biden presidency. Right, but what I really want to get to is there's some history in this one that we can get to, and it gives credence to the belief that the government is overpowered, because I like we've talked about it before about federal control over Western lands, right? Like 82% of the state of Nevada is under federal management.
I think it's anything like to the west of Nebraska.
Anything,
so every state to the west of Nebraska has a majority federal land.
Yeah, like California is like. California is one of the smaller ones with like 30-something%, but like Oregon's like 50 or 60%, and Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado
is actually pretty slim on that. Except
not on federal lands. The federal forest, national forest lands.
That's true.
Huge in Montana.
Yeah, Montana, Colorado,
like,
Utah.
Yeah, it's something like 52% of the western states is under federal control.
Think about that. That means that the largest single landowner in half of the United States
is the
federal government itself.
I have a question. If the federal government owns that much of each individual state out there, do they pay property taxes?
Fuck no.
I knew the answer. It was
they'll shoot you for being on it too.
Yeah.
Okay, the article. 5 years and 4 days after armed militiamen took over the Mauer Wildlife Refuge, a remote federal wildlife preserve in eastern Oregon, for 41 days, supporters of President Donald Trump stormed and briefly occupied the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. It's not hard to trace the links between Mauer and Washington. Familiar insignia, instigators, and ideologies fueled both anti-government actions. Extremist leaders and movement regulars from the Western U.S., including the former Washington State Representative Matt Shea, who supported efforts from afar in Spokane, and recently U.S. Senate candidate Joe Ray Perkins, a Republican at Oregon, who joined the crowd that laid siege to the Capitol, helped fuel the melee. Back in their message, if not their tactics, was a bevy of Western legislators who lent the movement's legitimacy by supporting Trump's baseless election fraud claims.
Hold on.
Meanwhile, one of the...
You say baseless elections of fraud claims?
That's what the article said.
That's what everybody in the mass media keeps saying. Just, oh, well, that's just baseless. That's just baseless.
Yeah.
Because if you say it loud enough and long enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. I mean, they say it's baseless, and the mainstream media says it's baseless.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sorry, when you're talking about one of the deciding precincts of the Michigan vote, and they're putting poster board up so people that are trying to observe any malfeasance can't observe. You can't tell me that they're not doing something they're not supposed to be fucking doing. And this is how we know the fix is in.
All right. Meanwhile, one of the most visible figures from the anti-federal government movement in the Western U.S., Cliven Bundy, expressed dismay that President Trump didn't stick to his guns after he issued a half-hearted message calling for the political end of the occupation.
He didn't stick to his guns because he wants to ban them just as bad as the Democrats do.
Yes. The anti-government occupations bookending the rise and fall of Trump's presidency show the mainstreaming of right-wing extremism in the United States. They also ported the potential for future conflicts here in the West. When President-elect Joe Biden takes charge of the federal government and its vast Western land holdings, he will enter an already delicate situation where armed extremist groups stand ready to rise up against the federal government.
You know, this sound, and I know that this is exactly how the article is supposed to sound, but this sounds an awful lot like there's a good chance we're going to have another Bundy Ranch standoff type of situation somewhere out there. But I don't think they're going to hold back this time.
Trump, right before he left office, gave the Hammonds back their grazing permit.
Mm-hmm.
So the Hammonds...
But I mean, Biden could just as easily try to revoke it again.
Yeah.
But I mean, what I mean is out there, if the state or if the federal government owns 50% of the Western United States,
mm-hmm.
and you've got, it's not just the Bundys that are going to have these grazing permits. You've got multiple ranchers all across the West that have these same permits. All it takes is Biden to send out BLM, and I don't mean Black Lives Matter.
It's not even Biden. It's not even Biden. No. Biden doesn't have to do anything.
No, he doesn't.
It's the BLM office. It's the Fish and Game office. It's the EPA. But those are the big ones.
I'm speaking on the idea that he is the head of the executive. All that stuff falls under the executive. So I'm using that as kind of a catch-all. But the Biden administration, all they have to do is go, we don't want to support this anymore. So we're going to confiscate all these animals that are privately owned, but they're grazing on federal lands.
Well, and that's what the whole Bundy thing was about.
And that's what I'm getting at is it takes is them to say with one rancher, we're going to take this, and because they're on federal lands, we're going to confiscate your cattle. And you're going to have a standoff again that happens out west, and especially out west in Montana, Nevada, and those areas, because those people are not afraid to pick up their guns and point them.
Not afraid, but they're fed up.
They're fed up.
Yeah, they're fed up.
But I don't.
And let's not forget. We had this entire past year was a buildup. right? They went from a peaceful armed permitted protest of 22,000 people in Virginia to peaceful protesting mask bans, right? To armed infiltration of federal buildings. To
before that, they had armed infiltration of state
buildings. Yeah, sorry,
because you had the state capital of
state
Michigan.
What I meant. To kidnapping plots and threats against elected officials, all the way up to what happened at the Capitol building. They had that in just under a year.
Right. And
it's a hell of an escalation.
And as we said,
that's hell of an escalation.
That instead of it being a gradual escalation, that is a goddamn peak.
Yeah,
but
it ramped up quick.
And that's going to lead to a head when you start talking about, say, BLM says your cattle can't graze here anymore, and if you don't get them out of here, we're going to confiscate them. And there's going to be a standoff, and this time I don't think it's going to end peacefully.
No. So the Western U.S. isn't the only place where anti-government sentiment festers, but here the wounds are open, frequently endured, and historically recent. Violence and the threat of violence in the region occurred within the context of a nation founded on the genocide of indigenous people. Leaders of anti-federal movements lean into the violent history and include factions that are specifically anti-indigenous. In defending his right to graze cattle on federal land in Nevada, a claim that successfully defended at Bunkerville in 2014 when federal authorities withdrew after being outgunned by militiamen, Bundy argued that his claim to the land was more legitimate than the Southern Paiutes because, quote, they lost the war. I mean, can't argue against that.
Yeah, he's not wrong. I mean, the reality is that there is a point, and I know that a lot of anarchists don't want to admit it, but there is a point where the right of conquest has to take a part because otherwise how far back do you go for the right to land? Like, are you going back 1,000 years?
That's a tangent. That's a tangent we don't need to get on. This next paragraph is really, this is the meat and potatoes for me. All right.
If you say it gets better, I'm going to kill you.
No. we have 2 articles later that fulfill that for you. Over the last half century, anti-government leaders have rallied to the image as the West population swelled and control over its natural resources became more contested and regulated. The original sagebrush rebellion of the mid to late 1970s, which inspired the modern Bundy-led standoffs, but were not nearly as paramilitary, came in response to federal public land laws like the Federal Land Policy and Management Act, Wilderness Act, and Endangered Species Act, which increasingly restricted how natural resources could be used. Those restrictions were seen as unconscionable overreach by the rural Westerners who had accustomed to using public land resources as they wished. Quote, the hardest thing to do in American politics is to withdraw a right, said Daniel McCool, a political science professor at the University of Utah. Even though the rights were privileges in the legal sense, the perception that they were rights and that they were being taken away fueled the original sagebrush rebels, McCool said. Quote, the roots of the sagebrush rebellion were that they were no longer got what they wanted. There is a direct line from that to the Bundy groups active today.
Well, duh. I mean, this is just a statement of no shit, fucking Sherlock.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I wanted to pick this up at is those ideas that the rights that we've experienced, the rights that we believe that are bestowed on us naturally, we also believe that the government is infringing on them, and that's where this sort of rebellion, where the boogaloo's coming from, where the anti-government is coming from, where the libertarians are coming from, those are all wrapped up in this domestic terrorism act.
Yep.
You
know, everyone that is encompassed in this article, everyone that is encompassed in what happened at the Capitol, everyone that is encompassed in the Bundys, every rancher like the Hammonds, every cattle rancher that believes that they have a right, that they have the freedom to graze on their own land, to build a stock pond on your own land, those are all going to be domestic terrorists when this bill is passed.
Oh yeah. Everybody. And all it takes to be labeled a domestic terrorist is to do something or say something anti-government. That's it. That's all it takes under those definitions.
Yeah. If you have ever said anything, if you didn't agree with the cost to replace the highway that ran through your town, and you said something negative about them at the city board meeting or whatever the hell it is, city council meeting or whatever, you could be labeled a domestic terrorist because you don't support the government.
Or if you led any kind of protest, and like all these people who were at these BLM, the BLM riots and stuff months ago, you think you won't be labeled domestic terrorists? You think that isn't coming for you too? It's coming for you too. It's definitely coming for you too. And if you think, well, but I helped with, I was anti-Trump and I helped with the Biden. Yeah, but you said how much anti-government stuff when Trump was in office, and you think they're not going to use that against you? Don't forget the night of the long knives. All right, just because you helped them get to power doesn't mean that you're always going to be their buddy. All they have to do is get enough power that they don't need you anymore, and they will turn on you so that they don't have competition because you pose a threat.
You were essentially a useful idiot.
Fodder.
You were a useful idiot. You stood up and you said, "Orange man bad," and you said it so loudly and proudly, and you were so happy when Orange man was no longer there or whatever. And now all you are is you're going to get thrown to the wolves just like the rest of us.
I mean, everybody at this point, everybody who doesn't absolutely unquestioningly walk the government line under this new bill is going to wind up being labeled a domestic terrorist. All it takes is that one wrong word, that one wrong sentence, that one thing
doing this,
that you did.
Simply doing this podcast.
Yeah.
We're domestic terrorists.
Yeah, under that bill, that's exactly what we're doing. We are domestic terrorists now because
we're supposedly undermining the authority of the government because we're questioning their decisions, and because we're questioning their decisions, we're domestic terrorists because we may influence somebody to decide that the government is not legitimate, or however you want to spin that.
like for example, okay, the people that rushed the Capitol, as foolish as we think that they are, were called seditious by people actively trying to circumvent the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah.
The
people who, a lot of the same people who are like, oh, that's un-American, that's so wrong, and then they deployed 20,000 armed troops.
They called it unpatriotic.
Yeah, unpatriotic. Right. As they deployed 20,000 armed troops to the Capitol.
I think it was 26,000 was the total.
And not only that, but in order to get around, I can't remember the name of the edict or the law or whatever the hell it is. In order to get around it, what they do, they swore in a number of them as U.S. Marshals,
so they could have arrest powers.
So they could have arrest powers.
Yeah, it's to get around posse comitatus is what.
That's what it is.
Posse comitatus.
Sorry, I've had a little bit too much whiskey. I can't remember that.
It's the exact same rule that Lincoln actually violated when during the Civil War. Is posse comitatus. It's
and they're comparing him to Joe Biden.
I know, and it's
which is funny as hell.
Publicly and proudly.
Yeah, comparing.
Abraham Lincoln and Joe Biden.
That cracked me up to no end.
I mean, it's like, Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, and he violated posse comitatus, and he bribed and threatened
people without trial.
Yeah, he bribed and threatened other members of the opposing political party to vote the way that he wanted them to intentionally. And then, that does sound a lot like Biden. You're right. But that's the thing is, like, these same people are, again, this is the Orwellian element here, where as they're deploying troops, as they're building walls around Washington, D.C. to make sure that the average person can't get in. As they're setting up all these troops and they're coming up with all these draconian laws, they're going, well, the dangerous people, the un-American, unpatriotic people are those people over there who are advocating for freedom and saying that what I'm doing is wrong. Those are the bad people. Not me. I'm your friend. See, and I'm doing this because I love you.
I want to point out,
here's
and
$1,400. Please don't rate us again.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to point out, a lot of the National Guard troops, or the entirety of the National Guard troops that were in place for the installment of the new regime, a lot of people don't know, or they never really paid attention to the fact that they were given the authority to use lethal force against anyone within their eyesight that had a weapon.
That is a weaker ROE than the troops have in combat zones.
Oh yeah, in Iraq you couldn't just shoot somebody for having a gun because everybody was carrying AKs. Right. Everybody had AKs.
If you were outside the perimeter that they set up, and a National Guardsman saw you with a pistol, a rifle, it doesn't matter. If you had a weapon, a firearm on you, they had the legal authority to shoot your ass on the spot.
That's the same ROE that they used at Ruby Ridge.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
If it has a gun and it's moving, kill it.
No. At Ruby Ridge, if you were Randy Weaver or Kevin,
if they came outside,
they came outside, they were it was game on, weapon or not.
Yeah, and I mean that's
Kevin Harris.
Yeah, and it's the mind-blowing thing is that there are still people who are under the impression that this is salvageable, that agree with them that we're the domestic terrorists for saying it's not salvageable. Look at what is going on, and you're telling me you think you can come back from this?
Not only that, but there are people out there that
not only that you can come back from this, but that the next election you can vote and take it over and make things right.
Yeah. Next time I'll own this boot that's on my throat.
Right. And what I was gonna say is, what drives me nuts is you see people that still to this day believe that the National Guard and the active services and the reserves are full of people that if the people rose up against the government, they would join them.
Yeah.
Are you stupid? Look at what just fucking happened.
Yeah, and remember that these troops that they had at DC, they heavily vetted them all. And they kicked out a bunch of them for posting things that were anti-Biden.
For having an opinion that was contrary to Biden.
So if you're under the impression that members of the military from the inside will somehow help in the event of a tyrannical government, I got news for you. No, because they won't be on the if anyone would, otherwise they won't be on the inside of the military anymore. They will fire them. They will be out. Yeah. So no, the military will not help you. The police will not help you. They will be against you.
All right. So now that they've secured the timing for our drone bombs falling on us.
I figure it's going to be about 6 hours
right now, like just targeting. There's a hellfire turning up. So
don't drone me, bro. All right, let's make fun of California.
Yay! I love
my favorite.
just this title alone, I know Christopher's going to explode. California preservationist sue to overturn law that requires property owners' consent to having their homes landmarked.
What?
I'll read that again.
So the owner of the hold on before you read it again. The owner of the house, they want to overturn a law that says the actual owner of a piece of land, has to give consent before they can landmark the house.
Yes, they want to overturn that because in California, if it is a landmarked home, there are certain regulations and rules that they have to follow if they were to ever renovate it. Like they can't tear it down and build a new home.
Yep.
Or anything like that if it's landmarked.
My property, my choice.
No,
there's
it's no different than
your property, their choice. You pay the taxes. Well, they tell you what you can have on it, who you can't have on it, what you can do to it, what you can't do to it, and you have to get a permit to renovate your own home on your own property that you pay taxes.
You can lick my balls.
It's the same, but it's the same thing in Wisconsin that where once it's marked as a historic property, you can't change anything. Like you have to, everything has to stay the same.
It has to be maintained as period correct.
Yeah,
but
so like that,
but that's in Wisconsin before it actually has to be the homeowner. Now, remind me
if I remember.
The homeowner has to request that the property be maintained as a historical landmark.
Yes. Yeah.
It is not something that somebody else can petition to say so and so lived there, so you have to maintain this.
The person who actually owns the property has to
owns the property.
Okay. Yes. But this gets worse.
Don't tell me that.
The lawsuit from 3 Orange County preservation groups argues that supposedly historic buildings should be afforded the same environmental protections as air, water, and forest.
Oh my God. What?
No, wait. What? That has to be a fucking joke.
It is not a joke.
What?
How do you somehow make that connection between natural things and somebody cut down a tree to build this fucking house?
A coalition of preservation groups in Orange County, California, is suing the coastal communities of Laguna Beach in an effort to overturn a recent amendment to the city's historical preservation ordinance that requires property owners to voluntarily opt into having their homes considered a historical resource and all the restrictions that come with it. Okay.
This is my response to this right here.
Quote, it would be unthinkable for the city to require owners' consent to review biological habitat or wetlands during the approval process, says Krista Nickholz, the president of the Preserve of the Preserve Orange County, said in a press release. Quote, state law recognizes that historical resources have comparable public benefit. Owner consent has nothing to do with objective standards of historical merit.
What?
But it's my fucking property. It's my house.
I bought this property. I own this land.
Oh, see, and the funny thing is, like, I've actually, like, because Lindsay, I'm obviously a historian. Lindsay was an archaeologist, so we've had those conversations where, there's this constant conflict within, like, if you are somebody like that, where you debate with your, like, would you, people still got to live places, but it's sad to see these historic things getting destroyed when new people want to move in. But I'm always reminding her when she's like, well, that needs to be preserved. I'm like, but people still got to live. They still got to function. And don't forget that, like, when a lot of times, like, when you dig a site that's like a medieval or a Anglo-Saxon site in Britain, you'll find that it's on top of a Roman site, which was on top of a Pictish site, which is on top of a Neolithic. And, like, these people just keep tearing all the old stuff down and rebuilding in the same place because it's a nice place to live. This is where they want to go. And by trying to preserve this stuff, what you're doing is you're saying, no more. You don't get to build in this prime spot that people have wanted to live at for hundreds, if not thousands of years anymore, because this one fucking person lived in this place, and now you have to leave it as is. Like, you can't do that shit. People have to be able to live places.
I can't wait for them to tear down all those tall buildings on Manhattan Island and put the teepees back.
Yeah, I mean, come on, like, dude, have you seen all the historical destruction on Long Island? Like, that used to be this beautiful farmland. All these historic plantations were there. Like, I can't believe it. I mean, it's obscene.
To bring it more local to you, Andrew, they need to bulldoze the entire city of La Crosse and put the native land, the native trading post that had been there for centuries before white people showed up.
Yeah, it needs to get completely because we don't want to lose out on that heritage. So I guess we're just gonna have to. I mean,
I'm not gonna read the rest of the article because it gets long and it's just gibberish back and forth. But yeah, that was
bullshit
that was
we're
the premise
right now.
Yeah, it's just. I just can't believe, like, again, like if you didn't notice what I threw up on the screen earlier, or if you're on the audio, it's the communist Bugs Bunny, the sorry, our property. It's right? Not your property, it's our property. I mean,
earlier when I said, this is my response, that I was holding up my Killdozer patch, because this is the kind of shit that is going to drive people who think, I emphasize think, that they own their own land, and they want to make changes to it, and then some bureaucrat's going to show up and go, no, that's a historical location, you can't do anything. My balls, I'm going to do it.
And consider too, like, there are already places that are labeled historic places in California that are so wildly expensive to attempt to maintain. So wildly expensive that they're barely maintained. They're barely, they're barely kept up at all. And they're, and the state, because it's a registered historic place, is required to do that and can't get rid of it if people stop visiting it. Like, because they need people to visit stuff in order to keep getting money. I mean, like William Randolph Hearst place in California. That's the Hearst Castle, which is freaking gorgeous, by the way. That is an amazing place. The man had taste. But it's an enormous house. And like, they talk about, how he made some modifications and certain, walls were boarded up and doors were eliminated and things over the years. Or some of the castles, Versailles and stuff that got modified by various people. And when you label it a historic place, like what happened to Hearst's place, actually, I think he might have donated it, now that I think about it. But either way, it's a gigantic liability, financial liability, that then you're stuck with, that you can't sell, you can't modify, you can't go, you know what, I don't think I need a 24,000 square foot mansion on top of this hill. I think maybe a smaller location would be better. Let's bulldoze that. You're not even able to do that. You're stuck with this monstrosity because one dude decided it would be a good idea to make it a historic place so people could go look at the opulence of some news magnate.
Or see, these are okay. Now hold on. These are the same sort of people that argue for tearing down monuments. Of the Confederate monuments.
Exactly. I was actually gonna mention Andrew. I mean, look at I've always called it the Cass Street Castle.
Yeah, the castle on Cass.
Yep. The place is fucking huge. It's on I want to say it's on a half acre of land in the middle of the city of La Crosse. And the last time it was on the market, now granted, La Crosse is a city of what, 54,000?
It's like 60-something thousand now.
Oh, is it 60 now?
Census. Yeah.
Okay, so 60,000 people. The city of 60,000 people. This place sells for $1.8 million.
That's like 3 bedrooms on a fifth of an acre here.
So to put it in perspective, so that people can kind of see, that is the castle.
Ooh, big Victorian style.
Oh, and it is a beautiful,
it is absolutely gorgeous. So I used to live, when I would come to La Crosse, my grandparents are about 4 blocks away from this house. But it's just one of them. It's just one of them though. But if you buy it, you can't change anything.
You can't alter
anything. You're stuck with what you got, which is all 19th century building. Like it's it's like people may want the outside of the house to look nice, but maybe make the inside modern. Not allowed.
Nope, not allowed. So,
and that's what is about to happen to all these people if they pass that bill in California. All these people that are living in these houses, are like,
in that Southern California area,
yeah, they're like, oh well, I might like to add on an extra bedroom or maybe, knock this wall out and expand this. Nope.
What?
Won't be allowed anymore.
You want to upgrade to modern electrical wiring and not use aluminum? What?
Yeah. Well, look at what happened to Notre Dame because they didn't want to install modern electrical stuff and they didn't want to install a too big a fire suppression system so that it wouldn't ruin the medieval beauty. And so burned to the ground like every other medieval cathedral did during the medieval age, the Middle Ages, because they are prone to that.
All right. That's a dead horse.
I think it's plenty flogged at this point.
All right. This one. All right.
Before you go into the next one, are we okay running over for a little while? I'm okay.
No.
We're at about just shy of 2 hours now.
No, we got about I got about 15 minutes left on the recording.
All right.
So, man jailed for allegedly posting photo of 2 men urinating on deputy's grave.
And it wasn't even.
Yeah. A Tennessee man was arrested Friday for alleged harassment after authorities said he distributed a disrespectful photo of a law enforcement officer's grave on social media.
He's dead. How are you harassing anybody? He's fucking dead.
Joshua Andrew Garton, 28, was arrested on suspicion of harassment and jailed in Dickinson County, Tennessee on $76,000 bond. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation said in a statement.
What the fuck?
The Bureau said Garton recently produced and distributed a doctored photo of 2 men urinating on the grave of Dickinson County Sheriff
They weren't
Sergeant.
even actually pissing on the grave. It was Photoshop. And this is harassment? Oh, what the fuck?
It's because he's a cop. If he wasn't a cop, they wouldn't have bothered.
Yes. Bureau produced and distributed a doctored photo of 2 men urinating on the grave of Dickinson County Sheriff's Sergeant Daniel Baker, who was fatally shot in the line of duty in 2018. Quote, just showing my respect for the deputy Daniel Baker, text accompanying the image said. State detectives visited the grave site and determined that the photo did not depict an actual desecration, according to the Bureau. Nashville lawyer Daniel Horwitz, who does not represent Garden, said in an email that the arrest appeared to violate the Constitution.
Oh, you think?
You fucking think? Mother of God. Andrew, you want to take a road trip?
I mean, this is, and from my experience living in the American South and dealing with the cops there, this is exactly the kind of thing they do all the fucking time.
Hold on. It gets better. It gets better.
Don't tell me that.
It gets better. Quote, the First Amendment clearly and unmistakably protects the man's right to post an offensive photo about a police officer, he said. The only people who broke the law here were the police officers and the TBI agents who participated in this flagrantly unconstitutional arrest. The Bureau said by email that the investigation and arrest were done at the behest of District Attorney General Ray Crouch. Quote, when requested to investigate an incident by a district attorney general, TBI agents served as fact finders. The Bureau spokesman Leslie Earhart said, quote, the DA determined what, if any, charges are placed.
There should be no fucking charges.
Yeah, you can't. Posting a doctored photo of a that appears to show the disrespect of a grave.
A photoshopped picture.
Yeah, that falls under free expression, free political expression, and parody, if anything ever did. And you think you're going to get away with arresting this guy and throw, like, if I was an attorney who was authorized to work in Tennessee.
I'm jumping. I'm all over windows.
This. Oh yeah,
I'm jumping through windows to get this case because the civil lawsuit will be fantastic.
Millions, and the badges of those involved. I mean, plain and simple, that's what I want. And I want the district attorney, if they did request that, to lose their position on the bar.
I want an official. I want an official in writing, signed in person apology for the arrest.
Yeah, we're sorry that we knowingly violated your constitutional
frame
rights.
that and put it on the wall and keep redistributing that photograph.
I mean, are you?
Oh yeah.
But this is exactly the kind of thing that Southern cops do because they're so heavily worshipped by so many people in the American South that they think they can get away with absolutely anything. And so they'll try and pull this shit, and then they'll get called out on it. They get sued. They'll wind up having to settle out of court. The taxpayer is going to have to pay the fucking bill for their insanity and their tyranny. And then the cops are going to try and hunt this guy for the rest of his life to find a way to put him back in jail.
Yep. And even if it wasn't a Photoshop picture, if this guy and his buddies had gone out to the cemetery and pissed on the grave of a dead cop,
that's at best.
At best.
Like maybe you could get a trespassing charge.
And
right?
Maybe a public urination charge.
Yeah, that's not a harassment charge.
That's not a harassment charge.
And then maybe there's a civil lawsuit from the people that own the graveyard.
Yeah, and that's the
that's
most.
Absolute most, yeah.
But right now they're talking about. Oh my God! $70,000 bond.
$76,000 bond
for a Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
For a fucking Photoshop.
Yeah.
And again, to call back to the domestic terrorism bill. This right here would be okay under that bill because he would be charged as a domestic terrorist because he threatened the cop's family. That's what they will say. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you that's what they're going to say anyways. He was harassing the cop's family.
They don't have to call it that. They can just call it like unpatriotic behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. You didn't worship the skycloth properly, so this is what you're going to get.
Yep. So now you're going to jail, and what are you going to do about it? Because at that point, you're not even if you're a domestic terrorist, they can throw you into a national security blanket for your trial, which means it's not even in open court.
Nope. You get charged in FISA court and it's all secret.
Yep. It's all behind closed locked doors. It's all secret.
And it's all protected under the National Information. Was it National Security Act? Or...
Can you imagine getting sent to Gitmo for supporting the Constitution?
That's where we're headed.
Yeah, we're not far off from that. We're really not. I mean,
if this domestic terror bill, to harken back to that, like we have been, if this gets passed, that's exactly what you're looking at. You're looking at regular, everyday Americans who just want to be left the hell alone, being sent to literally the gulag, as we mentioned during that article, for wanting to be left alone by the government. They don't want government interaction. But because they don't want government interaction, you go to gulag now.
Yep. So, all right, last words. Anything else you want to say?
Get the hell off of Facebook.
Yeah, abandon it. Abandon ship.
Fucking leave.
It's a sinking ship. You all know it is. Come on, move to MeWe, and
Andrew and I will be working on getting a Hootenanny Roundup. Working on MeWe.
Yeah, and you'll get plenty of hilarious memes again. And see, isn't that nice? And because the memes aren't censored, they can be much more in your face. I just posted one the other day that was the time of Orange Man is over. The time for rapey uncle has begun. And
I was laughing my ass off.
So that would never stay up on Facebook. I would get banned for that instantly.
Yeah, that would have been insta-zucked.
Yeah, so it's like, it's worth it, and Facebook is just going to keep turning into this steadily ever more
not just Facebook. It's the whole.
It's Facebook.
The whole
it's Instagram. It's Google.
Full woke technocracy.
Yeah,
that's my new favorite term, by the way.
Technocracy.
Full woke technocracy.
Yeah. Well, and it is. That's where we're at this point is a technocracy.
Oh,
because you can be, once you're deplatformed, like your voice is just snatched away from you and there's nothing you can do about it. So you're just stuck, it's pound sand, man. Yep. That's a load of crap.
And if you don't want Google tracking whatever the fuck you're searching for, Go to DuckDuckGo and use that instead.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, and if you keep talking to people like they're the enemy, eventually they're going to start acting like the enemy.
Yes.
Yep.
So, on that note,
talk to your neighbors, enjoy the conversation, even if you disagree. Talk to your neighbors, get to know them.
Yeah, freaking go outside.
When shit goes wrong, they're going to be the ones that are there to help you.
So, yeah. On that note, 3 plugs.
If you want to get awesome beard stuff for a discounted rate and have a soft, luxurious, and wonderful smelling, manageable beard like I have, go to thebeardstruggle.com. Use code InkedAnarchist15. All run together. You get 15% off. You support me, which is cool, and you get some amazing stuff in exchange. Also, check out Poppin's Patches. He's on Facebook. He's on Twitter. He's on everything.
Instagram.
I think he's got Instagram. He's got a website. Like, you want to order his stuff. His patches are awesome. I have one of them on now with the Boogaloo Shark. They're super high quality. They're really nice.
I have been absolutely pleased with the patches that I do have from him.
Yes.
Yeah. The artwork's really high quality. The production quality is very high.
And I am waiting for my t-shirt from him.
Yep, me too. I also got a t-shirt from him. I'm also waiting on, he's going to be sending me some patches and I think a couple of magnets to do giveaways with soon. They were supposed to be here, but apparently the post office decided that he didn't pay them enough blood money to get it to me, and therefore it wound up going back to him. And so...
See, only a government organization would do that. You didn't send us enough money, so we're going to send it back to you.
Yeah,
so twice the price.
So that you can originally pay how much you were supposed to pay.
Yep.
But not charge you for shipping it back to you.
This is government logic.
Government efficiency. All right.
Yep. Yay.
On that note, this has been episode 122. I think that's what we called it. 122. Which is a
royal clusterfuck.
Pretty decent AK round. But we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Later.